Once upon a time, a Midsummer Night's Press decided to print series of poetry books on common themes. Fabula Rasa is their series devoted, in their own words, to mythology, folklore, and fairy tales. Today, we're going to review two of the Fabula Rasa books. What If What's Imagined Were All True by Roz Kaveney is dominated by three sonnet sequences. One about the classical myth of Orpheus, one set in steampunk scenarios, and the central one, which is more heterogeneous in its choice of references. As far as pamphlets go, I really enjoyed this. Classical myth is explored in depth and taken in some interesting new directions, while the steampunk poems are colorful, imaginative, and wonderfully suggestive. I found myself helplessly captivated and drawn away to these worlds where the only limits are those of our imagination. The most successful aspect of this chapbook is not the way in which it builds congruent mythological worlds, rather the way that it juxtaposes them and forces us to reconsider them in terms of each other. Classical myth, which is sacrosanct in Western culture, is placed side by side with science fiction references or fantasy worlds, which are usually considered the realm of nerds. Though I guess technically students of classical mythology are themselves nerds of a kind. Hi, is your name Lida by any chance? Why? Because I would love to be your swan and only. What If What's Imagined Were All True is not a perfect chapter. Its main weakness is that Kaveney is not as confident with the form of the sonnet as one would like her to be. Her rhymes are often predictable, and even her meter stumbles a little bit. That aside though, her chapbook is really enjoyable and really thought-provoking. Fortune's Lover by Rachel Pollack is subtitled A Book of Tarot Poems. Why this should be the case I have no idea, as these poems have very little to do with the tarot. They simply have the same titles as some of the cards, but Pollack's stories are self-standing feminist parables which work perfectly well even without the references to the card, which I guess is fine, because I can see that the idea is that of making us reconsider the mythology of the tarot from a feminist perspective. But then I had problems with some of the feminist statements in the first place. One of her female characters attains emancipation by symbolically assuming the phallus. That is to say, by becoming a man? The oppressed is liberated by becoming the oppressor? Well, geez, that's a clever solution, princess. What have you been having this morning for breakfast? A sandwich with cucumber and a fox. Or the poem about the Garden of Eden. Again, I have no idea what this has to do with the tarot, but anyway. I can go with the idea that Eve was raped rather than seduced by the devil. But her portrayal of Adam, the man who represents all men, is one of an infantile, selfish, insensitive, idiotic, narcissistic, cowardly, whiny, egotistical piece of shit. Now, this isn't the first time that I come across feminist literature in which men are presented as a fundamentally stupid and immoral gender. And it didn't seem clever to me the first time either. Misogyny is a problem, but misandrism is not the answer. Quote of the day. Mythology is a really complex topic to treat, and I think these chapbooks in Fabula Rasa give us an idea of the difficulties and the rewards inherent in the subject. Kaveney's treatment of the character of Orpheus denotes a real understanding of the myth. She doesn't just look at the famous rescue of Eurydice, but also considers other aspects like Orpheus's relationship with the gods or his journey with the Argonauts. These sonnets illuminate the myth so that we see the connection and the pertinence of this story to our lives. Because, as she wonderfully puts it, it is the act of looking back that loses things. In the case of Fortune's lover, Pollack is so concentrated on driving her ideological point home that she forgets to include her source mythology. Take the card of the High Priestess, for example. Pollack says of it, "She will never leave this place, the black and white columns, the blue curtain heavy with palms and pomegranates, hiding nothing but a placid pool of water." Hiding nothing but a placid pool of water. Well, yes, but the pool of water is symbolic. To say that there is nothing there is to ignore the whole symbolic content of the tarot and to insist on interpreting it literally, which makes about as much sense as questioning how Snow White could have been asleep for 100 years. Yeah, she should have died, right? 100 years. Nobody lives that long. This is not reinterpreting the tarot. It's simply ignoring it. If you're going to call it a book of tarot poems, then either deliver on your promise or change that subtitle.